Welcome to the last day of the ownCloud conference 2018. It's a great pleasure for me today to introduce you to the documentation lead of SUSE, Markus Feilner. He will give a talk on OSI Layer 8. That's probably the layer that at least the support people know is the most challenging. I'm really excited about the talk. Please welcome Markus Feilner.
Thank you. Thank you. Yes, welcome also from me. I hope you're all awake. This talk is going to be about as dear colleague has said, the OSI Layers 8 and above. There is more. There's not only the OSI Layer 8, there's also others. And I called it the Praise of Folly or Security Theater. I don't know if anybody is familiar with Erasmus of Rotterdam. We are in a university here, so a little bit of history and maybe philosophy to start with isn't the worst thing. Erasmus of Rotterdam was a philosopher and author, and he wrote The Praise of Folly in the year, in the 15th and early 16th century. And one quote from that book that I really like and why I always liked reading it is that he said, isn't the whole life of mortals but a stage, but a theater where the various actors play their parts, and if you come in and tell everybody in the audience, this is just a theater, this is just a play, then you'd be driven out of the theater with bricks and sort of like shoot the messenger. And he's got lots of metaphors and allegories in his text that I really suggest reading. And because the people you meet on the stage, and this is like also in the security theater, they often come with various disguises. So who plays the king in one scene will play the beggar in the next scene. And another meme that I put here to start with is, have you ever heard of cargo cult IT security or cargo cult science? Yeah, one of my idols or one of the persons I really admired, Richard Feynman, coined that term, and he said cargo cult programming is a style of computer programming characterized by the ritual inclusion of code or program structures that serve no real purpose. So the slides have more text than usual, I guess, but they will be published and there's links to it for further reading. That's just my style. I like to give you a lot of information, and those of you who want can continue reading there. So what does Feynman say here is basically we're doing a lot of things that literally don't make sense, but that we just do because A, we are maybe used to them, we believe in them, or we even like to believe in them. Like rituals, yeah? And we do that a lot in security. And on the other side, we should all follow principles like POLAR, the principle of least astonishment. Have you heard of that? That's what we should do. We should program our stuff so that the users aren't really surprised. So the design should match the user's experience, expectations, and mental models, which often isn't that simple or doesn't really lead somewhere. I'm sure you've seen this picture that sort of shows the Windows firewall. Works perfectly, the gate, but some things missing. Or this picture is something I really like. This is how a bug passes through QA. And always remember that your users will use your software in ways that you can't even imagine. And then they will fail, but they might, very probably they will blame you for that. And talking of testing, you all know the concepts of unit testing and integration testing. So what we see here is we've got two products that, as long as they're kept separately, they work perfect. But if the user uses it in a way that you can't imagine, he might shoot himself in the eye. And maybe you also know this picture. This is what happens when you don't do integration tests. So what is the security theater about? Security theater is the difference between being secure and feeling secure. And Bruce Schneier brought up the term long ago. I'm sure you all know Bruce Schneier. He's like the pope of IT security. And I really suggest watching his talks on TED. And you all know there's a difference between feeling secure and really being secure. And at the same time, you may feel totally insecure, but you're absolutely safe. So what is this presentation about? We are already in the middle of it. I put in some maybe funny openers, then I'll tell you a little bit about me. Then I'll bring some definitions of security and security theater, and a technical explanation of the OSI layers, including the higher ones. And then I'll describe the main actors and plots in the security theater. And after that, I will have a lot of examples, analysis, and suggestions. The examples part is the part that I can cut short or go into more detail depending on the time that we have. And the disclaimer is very important. This presentation is meant to be understandable, and so there may be brevity or incompleteness in some maybe technical explanations, but I quote a book that I have here and that you will see later. It's meant to be understandable for also by children and managers, which is a challenge in terms of security sometimes, as you maybe know. Some of you may know me already. I'm the team lead of documentation, and in my history I have somehow, I found the red thread through my personal history is somehow I always liked dealing with danger, obviously. I like hiking and traveling, so this is my sleeping bag on the top of the Mount Stromboli in Sicily, where I slept on the top of a volcano when it was still allowed in the early 90s. Later we slept in Serengeti in the national park, and today, this is the pictures that my team members post on the internet saying, this is our boss. So, I don't know. I studied geography. I started with Linux in 1994, and I had my own business. I worked as an IT consultant, later as a journalist, and I wrote some books, namely about OpenVPN. And since 3 years, I'm working for SUSE in my first real management job at a bigger company. And yeah, I love doing crazy things, and there's lots of stuff about me that I do. One thing I want to point out is that as an editor at Linux Magazine, I learned how to get the best out of people over which you don't have any control, to sort of to welcome, motivate, and inspire. And that is something that I really learned. Most of the people do things just for fun, and so do I. This is the island where Linus Torvalds is probably going to retire to in the near future for a few days at least, because this is Tunham Island in Finland, where he and his family spent his summer vacations. This is his father and his boat when we rode there. And always remember, I think Linus's quote is that what's driving us all. And just for fun, I also founded my own company, and this is my first office, this was my first program management, this was the first server room, and please mind the great air conditioning, all in the 90s. As an IT consultant, I learned that we are always sitting between the chairs. You have sort of 3 chairs. One is your boss, who wants to sell you your working hours, your product to the customer. You are in the middle, you know what might be technically the best solution, and the third chair is the customer. And you have to find a solution between the 3 somewhere. And I was writing and authoring stuff, and in the end, I had to bring together the enterprise world and the tech world and the user. So I was, as the red thread also is, bringing together totally different worlds into one, a big bubble. Okay. Do you feel safe when you see this? This is in Utah. In southern Utah, there is a very nice recreation area, a not national park, but natural park. It's called Little Sahara. And when you enter it, you see this sign. I really felt like Simpsons when I went there. But this is, again, this is a wonderful sign. If there was a 40 or a 400, you'd feel much safer, right? It doesn't change anything. Yeah? It doesn't really change anything. It's just somebody putting up a number there that defines whether you feel secure or not. So it's always, as Bruce Schneier said, defining security is always feelings versus reality. And there's models of the reality that we build in our heads. You may have completely different models of your reality and what you need to have in order to feel secure. Another approach is a book that I really like. It's from the 80s. It's called Time-Based Security by Schwarthall. And it's a very good read because he connects basically every security issue to time. The question is not if you are going to be hacked. The question is when, how long does it take, how long does it take to find the person, how long does it take to fix the situation. So he brings in the concept of time-based security into every aspect of IT security and being hacked. So the question is not if your password is safe or secure, how long is it safe and secure? How long will it be safe? And that's a really interesting book. It's old, it's from the 80s, but it's still very good. Another concept here in security is we are in open source. So, of course, we are of the opinion, and for good reason, I think, that control and transparency are inevitable, are mandatory for security. Because we think that full control of code or full transparency cannot be missed. And that leads us to what I call the difference between security and trust. Or as you know, security by obscurity. So if you're using Windows or Apple or other proprietary products, your feeling security is based on the trust, on the amount of trust that you have for the vendor. Because there is no transparency. So in the end, one aspect comes down to transparency versus trust. Problem is, another book that I really recommend is Buddha's Brain. It's not about IT at all. It's about philosophy, neurology, and psychology. And one aspect in this book is really great. We humans basically fail. We fail utterly at assessing dangers. And there is reason for that. The reason why we fail in assessing dangers lies in our history, in our evolutionary history, in our biology. And we carry bias with us, and that makes it difficult to assess dangers or to judge how dangerous something really is for us. I'll go into the bias topic later. But after all that, I thought I should look up what dictionaries say about security, and I found almost all the aspects that I have said. I found them in, for example, the Oxford Dictionary. My definition is on the left. That's a definition from 2003 that I wrote in one of my first books. The good security is the good feeling that an administrator has in the evening when he leaves work, knowing he has done all he can to protect the services, machines, and colleagues. The Oxford Dictionary on the right has four different definitions of security. One is the state of being free from danger or threat. The second is against the safety against terrorism, theft, espionage. The third is already where I am pointing at procedures followed or measures taken to ensure the security of a state or organization. And the fourth is the state of feeling safe. And that is my main point, and fear from anxiety. And that is why security theater, it's a term that mostly came up after 9/11, with the airport controls that were introduced with TSA. Security theater is a practice of investing in countermeasures intended to provide the feeling of improved security while doing little or nothing to achieve it. I'm sure you've all seen that before. Talking of TSA, in 2014, the Washington Post wrote an article about the TSA locks on your suitcases. And because they are a high-quality journal, they added a high-quality, high-resolution picture of such a TSA key to their article. It didn't take long until the first 3D printed keys, TSA keys, were available. The problem was, it was a master key. So it was the master key that the TSA, that the Traffic Security Authority, used to open your bags to check for drugs, guns, or explosives. So the TSA locks on your suitcases is a wonderful example for security theater because it gives you the feeling that your suitcase is locked, which it isn't because we all can get these keys everywhere. And I was told in the meantime the security theater is that bad that you hardly find any suitcase without a TSA lock. And that's just, you can order these keys for a few dollars online, or you can print them yourself on your 3D printer. So what we learned here, the feeling security is much more important than the reality to us humans. And if someone comes in and uncovers the theater, the feeling secure is gone. You don't trust TSA keys anymore now, I guess, if you hadn't known before. And the feeling secure is gone instantly, just like quantum entanglement. Once you know it, poof, feeling secure is gone. But in corporate IT, we have blameware to the rescue. Blameware is a term that I coined in 2008 or something like that, I think. And it's a blameware means you buy services or software from an external company so that you don't have the problem anymore. My definition of blameware was, blameware is software that is being used because IT departments need somebody external for taking the blame in case something goes wrong or does not work as intended. It does not matter whether liability of any kind by the software vendor is realistic. All that's important is to get the blame out of the own house. Has ever won a lawsuit against Microsoft, IBM, or whatever? No, but nobody has been fired for buying something from them. That's an old German IT proverb. The whole thing, I coined that in a blog post, in a comment about the German Auswärtiges Amt, is an administrational organization that takes care of all the Botschaften. Danke, of all the embassies around the world. And they had Linux and they moved away from Linux. And the problem was that they needed somebody else to take the blame for stuff they couldn't fix. So here we see, we are already in the OSI layers. This is from Wikipedia, you can find it there. And I really like it because it takes the classical models and extends it by 3 sort of like non-technical layers. So let's go through it like we learned it in school or university. And this is where I use the pointer. Yeah, here we are. Where is it? Oh, it doesn't. Okay. As you all know, the data, so the levels 1 to 8, no, 1 to 7, that's a mistake, are technical. And layer 1 is hardware, level 7 is applications. And incoming data travels up from the physical layer up to the presentation layer, whereas outgoing data travels down from the application layer down to the physical layer. So on level 8 is sitting in front of the screen. Old consultants saying the problem is sitting in front of the screen is the user. And level 9 is the organization the user is in. That may be his management, his company, his corporate background. Yeah? And level 10 is politics, like government. And there's reason to discuss which is more important for him, 9 or 10. So there is reason to discuss whether we can exchange level 9 and level 10. But the thing that this graphics shows is that this is also determining what information is coming upwards or going downwards, yeah? Because it is transformed between the levels. And there is a lot of things that you can think about once you've got this model. And Jeremy Land has an article that suggests whether we should think if corporations are already something like an analog artificial intelligence, because they act, sometimes they act like semi-intelligent or not, or at least they act as if they had intentions. And Tim O'Reilly goes even farther in an article. He asks the question whether Wall Street dominated capitalism is already an analog superintelligence because we don't have any control about it anymore. And it's acting on its own behalf. Well, that's just food for thought. Let's go back to the security theater itself. And I said there's feelings matter in terms of security and trust. So these people, I'll show you just who the people are in Germany that are in charge of security. And if you follow German news, you will know them, I guess. So these are basically the people that are in charge of your IT security on OSI Layer 10 at the moment. Questions? And since these people often don't have much IT skills, they often try to fix problems with simple tools, in this case with rules, laws, and tightening the rights and the fundamental rights and stuff that we have. But that is also, also admins act like that. Why do they do that? They want to be re-elected. So we are now on OSI Layer 10. Yeah? They want to be re-elected. If we go down, we come to the corporations. What is their intention? They want to have or make more money. All of that is nothing bad or good. This is just the reality, I would say. The managers want you to do what they need for their boss, for their manager, for their career, or for their money. And what does the user want? OSI Layer 8. Usually, that is my experience, the users, and this is not unfriendly or lazy or in any way negative, this is just what most of the users want. They mostly want to go home in the evening and have a great life with their family. So they would say something like, I don't want to change, I don't want no stress, I don't want to learn, I want simple solutions that integrate with my habits, and you will lose me after the third sentence of an explanation like this. I need simple and understandable solutions. So income, us. That's where we come in, the IT people. And we have to deal with these OSI layers, with these different layers. And we might react with some fancy hashtags and some stupid IT TV series quotes. But we are caught in the triangle of secure, fast, usable, or secure, fast, and cheap. The user wants it to be usable, fast, and secure, and the company wants it to be cheap, fast, and secure. And you all know this is not always easy to reach. So what is the plot? What are the plots in all of this? These people that I show here, they will tell you are safe. And someone will try to use all of this setup to sell you some strange kind of sausage. If you've read Terry Pratchett, you know what I mean. There will always be somebody popping out of nowhere. Once there's 3 or 4 people in a room, somebody will come and try to sell them, do you want this? Do you need this? Like a drug dealer. That's also part of the IT industry. But they also take antivirus software and whatever, We can help you. This snake oil is perfect for you. Then there is the companies that come in and tell you, or the politicians that come in and tell you, give us all your data and you'll never have to worry again. No, don't. Like in 1984. And they will also say things like, we need more control because everybody wants mostly job security. And that's reached through the control. And anybody remember Sledgehammer, TV series from the 80s? If you don't remember it, have a look at it. Lots of it is on YouTube. It's great. He's got a huge Magnum gun and he's not acting very, very cautiously with it. But his tagline is, trust me, I know what I'm doing. And he doesn't know what he's doing. So I already said that if you stick with us, you're safe. And as I said before, if it's disclosed as theater, if there is evidence that the security theater is not, or that it's not helpful, that it's not working, the feeling secure is gone instantly. But the cool thing is you can sell a new product then. So what do you lose? You don't have anything to lose. And so there's two aspects to that. A, you can sell a new product, or you have to, as a company that wants to sell something here, you have to shoot the messenger before he tells everybody. Both is classical plots on the stage of security theater. We have several masks, disguises, costumes, because I said before that the actors come in different roles. We have the management and its anti-patterns. I have that in a completely different speech. I have many more, and I think Fefe was here and he did his talk about anti-patterns. Yeah? So I don't know if he, you know, Yamfi. Yet another meeting will fix it. So you've got a huge security bug, but somebody will always be sure that another meeting will fix it. We regularly play conference bingo, and there's other stuff. I have, lots of them in another presentation. Then we have the consultants, the mask of the consultant, and I call consultants an anthropomorphic personification of blameware, because they come in order to take the blame. Often, not always, but often they come in to take the blame if something goes wrong. They get paid for it. I was a consultant, I was in that role. Very interesting is the role of the coders and nerds, sort of the skilled IT people, which I assume that you are here. So you all know or may have seen onion code before. Onion code is code that wraps in several shells around something that somebody hasn't understood. So you run software and it throws out an error, and you don't know why. So what do you do? Because you don't have time, make a wrapper so that it works despite the error. Yeah? Next time, you're gone, you're working for the next company, somebody else comes and has the same problem because your wrapper throws out an error that nobody understands, so he does another wrapper around it. That's what we call onion code, not really fixing things, but just wrapping stuff around it. And of course that's not helpful. But what's also not helpful is the classical security nerd sentence that is like, you can't be totally safe, so why worry at all? Or if you cannot be totally safe, you shouldn't do that at all. That's difficult. That's like the quotes from the IT crowd. Have you tried turning it off and on again? Or this gen is the internet, whatever. This is resignation, I think, and that's not the right way to go. And again, the layer 8, the user, who's more, Germans are pretty good in complaining, or Europeans. I've learned that Czech people are also very good in complaining. And this software never works. Why is this so slow? My computer is a mess. And on the other side, we have the mantra of the container developer. It works on my system. And I've got some examples for that. I said before, I have this is the cognitive bias that we carry with us. We love to believe in things that we've learned, or in things that we think that are true. The cognitive bias codex is a wonderful graphics. Each one of these entries in this circle is one type of bias that humans have acquired over evolution, and where we think that it is true. For example, everybody tends to believe, once he's found out a truth about something, everybody tends to believe that everybody else will understand that, which is not always true. But we've got this bias. We tend to think that others think like us, for example. And that's all stuff that we want to believe. In this graphics, it is 4 sides. We have on one side too much information, not enough meaning, need to act fast. What should we remember? And in all of these realms, there is space where we want to believe in things despite there is evidence in the real world that it's not true. That's all rooted in the fact that we are tribal from evolution. And that has helped us. That kind of simplification has helped humanity in the terms of evolution and becoming modern humans a lot. But in many cases today, when we try to assess, for example, dangers, it's become a big problem, or it is a problem. So, for example, what would you suspect is the most dangerous place at an airport for you? The security check. That's a very recent study that people went around airports and did a collection of viruses and bacteria, and they found that these trays where you put your wallet in, and the whole security check area is the most dangerous part for you at an airport, because it's the dirtiest airport. They have more viruses and bacteria there than on the toilets. We don't think that. Yeah? Nobody would have guessed that. But once we know it, it's like, oh, of course. Huh? Then we love technology, but we really do not know. This is from Guardian. We simply don't think about it. We don't think about it. We don't know. Sometimes we don't want to know, because we want to believe that this stuff is cool, great, wonderful. But the consequences, the possible consequences, we don't see, we don't want to see, we don't want to hear. We want to use smart TVs. And lots of them do eyeball tracking, for example. And they can tell you what you watched last year. And if you look at the dark-haired woman for 10 minutes, wherever you look, whereas the blonde lady was not your taste. Change men, women here. Yeah? But Netflix knows what you watched last summer, and Netflix knows when you usually go to the toilet during a movie. And this is now in German. If you're good in German, I suggest you should watch this. This is the website of the Heute Show. And this is one of my favorite comedians, Nico Semsrott. He's a depressive comedian, and he's an anti-motivation trainer or a demotivation trainer. And he always uses a lot of facts in his speeches. And this is a great one, because he's talking about the fact that we are so much afraid of terrorists, while at the same time stairs and ladders kill much more people every year. So his question is, who's the leader of the ladders? What's the plan with the stairs? Why are they killing all those people? What do they want to achieve? When will they unveil their demands? What do they want? And it's just because we assess danger in a wrong way. We tend to overestimate dangers that we can imagine more vividly. For example, a plane crash with a lot of fire, explosions and stuff flying around everywhere is much more vivid in our in the little cinema in our head that has made us intelligent. Yeah? There's a little part of our head where we can like set movies in scene of what might happen. And in this little cinema, a plane crash is much more frightening, scaring than a car crash. And thus we are much more afraid of a plane crash than a car crash. We get in cars, sit in cars every day. And it's much more likely to be involved and even die in a car crash than in a plane. But what are we afraid of? Huh? Or ladders, stairs. And that pervades our real life. We have a lot of things we have a lot of things in our daily life that we do, and we want to believe that they are helpful. That ranges from bicycle helmets in a world where severe head injury is much more common for housewives, people in cars, and even pedestrians. So if the logic behind bicycle helmets is correct, then every pedestrian, every person in a car, every housewife should wear helmets all the time. But we want to believe it because it's vivid. And there's one more thing that comes in that I'll come in later, is the ratchet system. Yeah? That once you go there, you cannot go back. Another thing is code of conduct. That's also something, we believe in it, and I think in the US it's really necessary because they don't have the law, the legal coverage, the freedom of speech is not limited there. But it's something, again, it's about feelings. If it works, if it gives people the feeling of being secure, it is good. But I personally doubt that we reach the ones we want to address. The next thing is the war on drugs. It's just normal for the whole world to fight drugs. Portugal, however, has gone a different way, and they prove that it's more efficient what they do through legalizing and investing half of the money into social stuff. Or my favorite, polygraphs, Lügendetektor, polygraphs, the lie detectors, they were the root of a whole section on Wikipedia that's called pseudoscience. They have been proven to not work. They have been proven to be wrong. There is paths to betray them. If you do training, you can learn how to betray lie detectors, but still, they are being used in the US a lot. Next thing, video surveillance. The city with the biggest amount of video surveillance in Europe is London. There have been lots of terror attacks in London, and it is known that video surveillance does only move criminality to other spots, but many people feel safer with it. There's lots of that. You can make a long list, and a friend of mine, Peter Shaw, who was our data protection officer in the Republic of Germany, he wrote a great article last year about the hack back. That means that the government wants the right to hack your systems or to hack some attackers' systems. And he wrote a great article about why surveillance is counterproductive to security. So there's a lot of things like that where we think that it's helpful. And on the other side, there is holes open wide as crazy. I mean, it's good that Apple introduced two-factor auth last year. Some of you may remember. You need a username and a password now. They had a flaw in the system where you could gain root access without password. So they entered a password. People are being told, and this is already the example section now. Let me look at the clock. Yeah, I'm pretty good. This was the first time in 2012 I wrote an article about mobile banking and TANs, TANs, transaction numbers. And that was inspired by an invitation from Cotal Consors. They are not far from here up the road, I saw. Big bank for stock trading bank and stuff, a very renowned bank. And they invited a hacker and they invited tech journalists. And the hacker showed us how easy it is for him to hack mobile TAN systems. And he said beautiful sentences like, modern smartphones are so fast and they are in the same Wi-Fi like your computer. So it really doesn't matter anymore if it's your smartphone that hacks your computer or if your computer hacks the smartphone. They're in the same Wi-Fi, so it cannot be considered a safe second factor. And he showed us how he caught SMS that went to the system. So he compromised the web account of your bank, and that's it. He said that the most difficult information then was to get the phone number that is connected to a computer, not to a computer, to a web account. That was in 2012. And one of the best takeaways was Schwarthall Consors had invited for that. And they said, yes, we know mobile TAN is not secure, but it's not being exploited. And that's why we still recommend it to our customers. Once we see it actively being exploited, we will stop recommending it. I think, yes, great, wonderful. But that is how you bring fake second factor auth to people. And a mobile phone is not a real second factor. But it's making people feel better. Same thing about biometry in general. Some of you may remember Wolfgang Schäuble. He's still in politics, but he was the German Secretary of State for some years, and he said the beautiful sentence about biometry. He said, everybody can have my fingerprint. Well, in fact, everybody has his fingerprint, and the great guys from CCC said, okay, good. And I mean, if you're unlocking your phone with your fingerprint, that's beautiful because you've left it on bottles here everywhere. So you left your password on every drink that you had here, on the benches where you sat. So it's everywhere. And the Chaos Computer Club did exactly that. They got the fingerprint from Mr. Schäuble. At Linux Magazine, we printed it on cups, on mugs, on coffee mugs, and sold them. But the best thing was this guy who made it a stamp. So you just need the right oil, and you could fake the stupid fingerprint readers. You could fake with that. And that's why fingerprint reader, or basically any kind of biometry, should be a username, not a password replacement. But it's going on with the IoT and with the smart homes. That's one of my favorites. You have to think about probably a little bit. But hackers take control of Sonos and Bose speakers to chat with Alexa, and then they played Rick Astley. I think this is great. I like that. That's nasty. But even worse, South Park, first episode of the last season. If you haven't seen it, watch it. It's great. If you have an Alexa, a Google, or or any other device like that, turn them off before, because you will have a lot of not safe for company or children usage items on your shopping list later. So, and the best thing is they create a loop. They create a loop where Google and Alexa keep talking to each other. And it's really great. So, but that's all just the consequence of these things. And if you think speech recognition is safe, I'm sorry. And at the same time, users will store important passwords in places where you won't believe it. So remember the Hawaiian missile alert? Was it this summer? No, this winter. So it took them so long to declare it that it wasn't a real alert, or that it was not a fake, but that it was wrong, because this politician had forgotten his Twitter login. So that's where we're face palming. At the same time, the governments spend a lot of money in mobile hacking, so they want to have access to our phones. What could possibly go wrong? Well, everybody can have access to that. And military is taking big efforts to secure and save and keep their places obscure. What you see here is, I think it's Masr al-Sharif in Afghanistan. And the lower map shows an American Air Force base there, John Pratt. And you see that Google Maps is not allowed to show the internal road system on the Air Force base. But Fitbit does. Soldiers love to do training. Soldiers love to run, to work out, and to have smart watches, Fitbit devices that do the tracking for them and tell them how much they have run or walked with GPS. This data is uploaded and presented in maps. So this map up there is created by Fitbit data, and this is the same map as underneath, and you can see the roads and buildings in this Air Force base in a perfect way. Just because people were told that their smart trackers, Fitbits, whatever, they are secure, and that is the biggest problem of IoT devices and stuff. So if you go to ship tracker Shodan.io, Shodan is a guy who is very interested in IoT devices and IoT hacking, and he set up this website when he found out that most of the commercial vessels that we have on this planet, they have internet uplink with a standard device, and they connect to satellite network. And these standard devices are like internet routers, like DSL routers we had at home. And they also have standard passwords. But they're all reachable within. Once you're in the satellite network, you can jump from one ship to the other. And so when he found that most of the ship owners didn't change their standard passwords because they thought, we are out on sea, we are not in reach from somebody else. They didn't think of the satellite. And so this guy wrote a script that took over ships, or ship's hardware, not the ship's hardware, the router, the Wi-Fi router on the ship, and told him in this map where the ships are and how many. So at this point he had a total of 108,000 ships. Big ships, small ships, but commercial ships who had this uplink, internet uplink. Problem with that is these uplinks also offer extended services for the ships like GPS. And he could fake that. And when you're in a harbor like New York or Los Angeles, 50 meter make a big difference if you're a big container ship. And he also found a gas station in Kansas, the middle of the United States, actually exactly where United States is written. And he found a gas station with 3 gas tanks that probably were under the earth, hopefully. And they would send their temperature data to a server. And then probably a heating or cooling system would start to keep the gas at a safe temperature range. So what could possibly go wrong? He could fake these data, and then the server could tell the gas station tank to heat. Well, oh, by the way, I was told in the North Sea, that's not that dangerous, but the system is probably the same. The wind power, the big fans that we put in the sea, the wind power generators, they also use simple uplinks to send their data, their sensor data to a central server, and the central server sends them steering commands, control commands. So with these things, nothing bad can happen, but if you know that, then you can make them defunct, and that is probably the bigger problem here. If you think antivirus software will ever help you here, no, probably not. We had this Hacking America story in 2008. We already knew that there had been 60-something attacks that went through antivirus software. So it's not wrong to say that antivirus software is making your machine more vulnerable, because in some places, for example, machines that don't have a PDF engine, because nobody will ever read a PDF on this machine, they will get a PDF engine by the antivirus software, because the antivirus software per default thinks that it should scan PDFs because they might contain viruses and stuff. But in the end, it doesn't matter at all. When I did the research for the Bundestags hack in 2015, I found papers from internal meetings where the boss of the German BSI, that is like the NIST in Germany, the Bundesamt für Sicherheit und Informationstechnologie, he told the admins and the politicians of the Bundestag, don't worry about antivirus software, they only catch 40% of all possible attacks. So that was the boss of the German security authority that said that. So here we are with the snake oil that I said before. And as I said, it can open you to attacks that otherwise wouldn't be possible. Yeah, and then we have the political problem on high OSI layers. Again, a CCC quote from Linus Neumann: for every technical problem there is a political solution. And that also happens in companies and corporates, I have seen. And that's also, again, where blameware and consultants come in. There were some companies very well known, or some projects very well known. To Germans, the email, safe email with end-to-end encryption, but the key stored on a server, I think. Well, or the special email service that is mandatory for lawyers and that will start. And it's such if you start reading about it, it's just horrible. They send around. They published the private keys. Not that they wanted to publish the public keys, but in effect they published the private keys. And they didn't even know what they were doing. But nevertheless, it's mandatory now for all lawyers. And a company behind that is also known for fixing the health service, the National Health Service in Britain, and had to pay £500 million, or lost a £500 million contract for that. And the company is a good example for what some people call too big to not fail. And that is one of the themes, one of the topics on this OSI layer 9 and 10. Things are too complicated, too big, and honestly, I have not found a real solution for that. One of the solutions, however, is talking and explaining things to people, and this book here is a wonderful example for that. It is a book for children and management about SCADA. Anybody familiar with SCADA? Ever heard about it? It's systems control, supervisory control and data acquisition for example, nuclear power plants and other stuff. That is what has been attacked by Stuxnet in Iran. It's a control system architecture using computers, networks, and GUI for high-level process supervisory management. Sort of like a clicky, bunty thingy. And people will keep telling that it's safe and secure, but the problem is it was never built for being networked. And so there's gazillions of systems out there that can be remotely attacked with it. In the case of Stuxnet in Iran, the systems weren't even connected to the internet, but they were connected to a local network, and with social hacking and USB sticks, it worked in the end, and the facility with the centrifuges blew up because the sensor data they sent did not reach the server got wrong data, and thus the centrifuge sort of went with a wrong speed, which caused vibrations and blew them up. And here we are at what the authors, one of them is a university professor and former IT expert at the military, and the other one is a children's book designer. So what the authors say, the problem with the industry is that a lot of efforts is focused on warding off big attention-grabbing attacks. But the small ones, the standard ones, the easy ones, the low-hanging fruits are never touched. And something like Stuxnet, I've said it, I've told you as an example, that is something that is in the media, that is everywhere. But it's again, that's like the bicycle helmets. It's not very likely to happen. And when this is, again, I did it. I did attention grabbing here with this stuff. Yeah? It's a huge problem. It's very, very dangerous. But basic security measures could help. But no, we are looking for big political solutions because we are, again, on OSI layer 10, on the top layer. And most basic security measures are not in place. And he says something that I think is also very, very important. Instead of thinking about low probability events, industrial controllers should be considering relative mundane things such as hackers attacking their databases. And that's very simple, and it's also very simple to protect them against that. And that is the sad thing. And here we are again at the pictures of the politicians that I showed to you. A lot of people who go on about cyber war just want job security and big contracts. And here's where this is the theme of the top layers. Yeah? We've got these companies that are too big to fail. We've got these politicians who want to be re-elected, and the companies that understandably want to make money. And in the end, it's more about job security and big contracts than about really fixing the problems. So, I'm speeding up a little. Enforcing regular password changes, for example. Oh yeah, that's another example that's basically what sparked this talk, because I saw a company where password changes every 3 months were enforced, and I thought this does not make sense. And it's true, I found evidence I found scientific evidence that if you force your people to regularly change their password, everybody will create patterns for the next password. And so if you're a hacker, you don't need to attack the whole dictionary of possible passwords anymore. You just need to find out what's his pattern, and then you attack his pattern. And the Kent State University, I think they said they only needed 2 or 3 old passwords from their students to be able to guess the new one. So that's why security theater, enforcing password changes, actually is meant to make your situation better, but it's making it worse. Yeah, and password reuse, of course. On the other side, do you trust the service? Who do you give your password? How safe is your password manager? So and usually an apartment at home is safer than your PC. Your safe definitely is. But again, in comes the user, OSI Layer 8. Oh, I can't have that. I want the passwords on my computer. I don't want to type them every time. And you're telling me every password that I can remember is a bad password. So how should I don't want to type it in. Huh? But today, and especially with the new laws that the politicians make, still a written note in your home, in your apartment at home, is safer than any password that is stored on a computer. But there's always another side. Your banking password is also stored at your bank, not only on your computer. It's your question, and it is something I'm coming to. Basically, for passwords, there's 3 things. Don't reuse it. Use one password for every server, a different one for every server. And length matters and entropy matters. Nothing else matters. Everything else, every password that you can remember easily is a bad password. And don't forget the aspect of time. Passwords that were perfectly safe 10 years ago aren't safe anymore. RSA algorithms that we used 10 years ago aren't safe today. And the ones we use today, they will not be safe in 10 years from now. And that's a great thing when you think of IoT. We've got IoT devices out there that run kernel 1 dot something. Yeah? We will have so many problems with security with these old devices in the future. Another myth I wrote an article about is the darknet, that you're anonymous there and safe. Yes, you are for about 5 minutes. Then the websites can identify you by the data your browser has collected. Yeah, let's not talk about hardware. And some of the newer attacks said crypto checking. You know that some websites will start plugins in your browser that mine Bitcoin while you are on the website and until you kill the process. And others not only do that, but there's how-tos on the internet how to harvest credit card numbers and passwords from your site. So, yeah. The problems with these things is that there is something new, a new development in the last decade, I would say, is that our algorithms have become more and more complicated, and where 10 or 15 years ago, we would have strings and variables and fields of databases as input. Now we have the output of equally complex algorithms. And so that leads to the strange situation that is also described in this article and that I had in a chat with a developer from Google when they had to introduce the right to forget. They said, we don't know how to do that. We are our software, our search engines, we are turning some dials and we watch we look at the outcome. But it's not a directed approach anymore. It's too complex by now. And that is, when you're interested in AI, that is exactly what's happening there. Their work has become unfathomable, complex. That's the article, yeah, it's called God is in the Machine. It's a great article to read. And my last example, at the same time we have the big problem that goddamn, we don't fix it. We don't fix things anymore. There was the bridge, the Firth of Tay Bridge. I mean, some of you may have heard that in school. We read articles about it in school. It happened in the late 19th century, but it was really something very, very, a very strong event in British history. Killed 60 people, and it changed the way we build bridges forever. That was a time, huh? Major events caused a big technical change. Does that happen in IT anywhere? Do we really fix big things? Mostly not, because mostly what I see, maybe I'm too negative on that, but what I see mostly is things like the X-ray machine, the Terac 25 in the late 80s. It killed a lot of people because the software was flawed and caused too much radiation being poured on the people, on the patients. But the companies denied it, everybody denied it, also because if you die from radiation, it will take months or years, and it's hard to deduce it or to root it, to find the roots of it. But in the end, it came out that it was a race condition in the software that caused too much radiation. And I think that is more what we are still doing today. There's no responsibility. And another item where this shows, and this is the last two things that I want to say, when we find flaws and stuff, there is no use, there's no good in keeping them back. There is no responsible disclosure. You know the term? So when you find some errors, mistakes in software, there's only one thing that we should do, and that is tell it. This has been an old discussion that started in the 19th century as well. And one of the most famous locksmiths of that time was Alfred Hobbs. And he already said, "It is to the interest of honest persons to know about insecurities, because the dishonest are tolerably certain to be the first to apply the knowledge practically." So we have this red risk, that is the pre-disclosure risk. And that is the part where the evil people can do evil things. And after disclosure, everybody is working on fixing it. So it's by not disclosing it, we just extend the red interval. And Bruce Schneier thinks this too. And he's also getting very, very angry on initiatives like Hacking Back and the government engaging in buying zero-day exploits and stuff like that. And it's, again, a good read. So so if you find it, tell it, and governments should not engage in this market. And another thing that I would want here is that what the Open Source Business Alliance calls public money, public code. I would say, I would even go farther. So the thought is that if software is bought by the state or any state organization, then the code should be open source and made available to everybody. I would go even farther. I would say we need liability in software vendors. There is, for example, if you take Volkswagen, who cheated with their software, I still wonder if they will get away with it. But usually we don't have liability in software. And why not exempt open source from liability? Introduce strong liability in software, in the software industry, and then exempt open source from it. Because that is a benefit to society to have the code available for everybody. And I really think we should engage, we as a society and OSI Layer 10 should engage more in these topics, because with the internet today, with the four companies that have monopolies, we see what happens if we don't engage at all. We've got Google, Facebook, Amazon, and Apple dominating it. And there's loud calls to split them up, to break them up, but I don't think that will happen soon. That's why I think we have to make rules and define rules. And open source has to play a bigger role, even though it's not a guarantee for security, but there's no ultimate security without it. As I said before, there's only trust. Public money, public code, I said. And another thing, I think that with having said that open source is no guarantee for security, but there's no security without it, that's why I say we should make it mandatory for certified secure infrastructure and environments. Certify user hardware and software. That sounds like far-fetched, but we have one area where we have that for almost for all players. We have that in traffic. The cars are certified for a year or two. The drivers have passed the certification, and we're discussing if all drivers should renew their driving license. We have liability in the owner of the car and the user as the driver. If the driver can't be found, the owner of the car is liable for anything that has been done with his car. And we certify the hardware in the car. So we basically have a role model here, and I really wonder if we could not make any suggestions to adapt that to IT needs. Maybe it's just a funny idea, but I think we could do that. And we could still have uncertified stuff and fun like we have with we don't have that much in Germany, but go to Great Britain or the US, you have lots of racetracks and stuff where you can have fun with a lot of uncertified stuff. Racetracks, parks, off-grid tracks and stuff. Problem is in politics and that is the last thing, is that we have this ratchet going on. A ratchet means there is a wheel that can only turn into one direction. Yeah? And it's like a zip tie. Politics and the need to find political solutions to technical problems, they are like just always tightening the grip, never going back. And one thing against that, and that's happening everywhere. That's happening in terrorism laws, and when we talk about refugees, that's everywhere. That's in the new police law that has been passed and is active in Bavaria. We always go tighter, but we never go back. So what could we do against that? Well, I think my suggestion for that is introducing sunset clauses. I don't know if you're aware of the term. Sunset clauses means these are rules and stuff that are only valid until sunset. From dusk till dawn. No, they end under certain conditions, when conditions are met. So what do we need for that? We need clear goals, we need reviews and mechanisms for missed goals. I think we need something like that in every security-related law, order, or decision. I even think it makes sense in companies. So how would that work? You say, okay, we will introduce this new software system and we will see if it works, if it helps us, and what are the benefits. And we will define goals. We will make a review in 6 months and one in 12 months. And if these goals are not met, we will stop using it. This is something that I think might be really helpful. And I think this should be mandatory if it's security related. But it's just an idea. It's a common saying. It's a common practice in law, for example, in the European Union. But unfortunately, not in security topics. Well, what can we do until then? Common sense, and that's no witchcraft. If you think, what can I do with all this mess that's going around on the higher OSI layers? What can I do? Well, the most important question that you should ask is, against whom do you want to protect? There's not much use in trying to protect your family at home against the NSA. Sorry. It will need a secret service to protect against the secret service. And even if you're one of the world's best hackers, The NSA has some 30, 40, 50 or whatever of the likes of you to cope with that. The question is only, do they want that? Are you the target, or are you spending too much energy on wrong goals? So who do you want to protect against? And especially the nerds, the techies, the security nerds, they often forget one really helpful rule from project management. That's the Pareto Rule. 80% is fair enough in most cases. You won't ever reach 100%. There is no 100% security. But you have to decide against who do you want to protect and how far do you want to go? What is the risk? And that's where the managers come in again. They need to do their homework. Managers and politicians need to do their homework. And based on risk assessment, they need to create goals, reviews, checks, and enforce them. The users, OSI Layer 8, be ready to learn again and again. And in your organizations, be sure install a culture of errors and mistakes, because that's how we learn. And as I said before, open source is mandatory for security. There is no security without. Oh yeah, unfortunately not all politicians are stupid or ignorant of open source software. Some of them really know, but they don't care. Or the worst of them, they do care. They do care in the other direction. And that's another story, and that is where I'm happy that the Open Source Business Alliance, where Holger is also in the board for ownCloud, is doing a lot of work, and that's tough work of lobbyism on OSI Layer 10. But as you see, there is work that can be done on every one of these layers to improve security. So, my first question to you is, do you have any questions? Thorsten, do you need a microphone? Does this work? No. Okay.
So, first of all, thanks for the talk. I have two remarks. First of all, I hope my bank is not storing my password in clear text. I hope they have some encryption hash algorithms, which you stated out that my bank knows the password, but in fact they don't, hopefully. That's the first remark I have to say. If not, I have to switch my bank. And the second,
as long as it's a different password than you use for LinkedIn?
Yes, of course, yes. Yeah, I know LinkedIn knows my password unencrypted. And although I have no account there, I'm very sorry. And the second thing is, you mentioned in the last time that, yes, we have this thing, like we need to get to some regulations in IT like we have on highways or in our car industry, that we can use it without, or with less danger for people. That's a funny approach on the one side, because it might work. On the other side, I have a strong opinion on this, because our politicians said that in the 90s already, and there was a clear statement by the Chancellor Kohl back then saying data highways are state responsibility or not federal responsibility, so they should care about the highways. That was really funny, because he didn't understood even. So I don't think we have politicians at the moment at the level that these policies will be applied in any way that will be happening. And the question about is this: do you really think this TÜV, I don't know if the German term is, it's like the car control agency, let's say it like this, which checks your car every 2 years on technical things, is even, first I think checking every 2 years is not often enough. And the second thing is, because IT changes a lot, and second thing is, we have already a lot of bullshit certifications coming out of exactly these car control organizations now, saying this data is secure, this shop is secure, this invoice is secure. And I have to state out, TÜV Saarland is doing a really great job on this, on putting out bullshit certificates. And the question is, do you think this will help if we get such certificates, or will it just put pressure on the amount? In the end, last sentence, I might compare to waste management. We have already one of the highly regulated markets at all in waste management and dangerous waste. And in Germany, we are worldwide known for doing really, really nerdy stuff and over-engineering on waste management. In the end, our TVs and refrigerators end up in Southern Africa anyways. So we don't really apply policies there, and we really fail in doing it. And IT is way more complicated than putting a truck with waste somewhere. And already that we fail hard. I don't know if our society is at a level where we can reach this. And it's really sad for me, but I don't know how to say it different.
Yeah, the problem is that we have to explain. You're absolutely right, and a lot of the things that we have to explain and in situations where we have to explain them to politicians, like these, for example. For my part, I've always tried to explain more and more. The only person I ever gave up on explaining was Dorothy Beer, I think, but that's another story. The problem is that the IT skills are very little in the higher realms of security politics. Yeah? The other thing is, that's absolutely true. We have to find a way to get in there, and the CCC is doing a great job also there. And the other problem is you can see a car can be seen as a weapon, or at least let's call it a very dangerous thing. The same applies to a computer nowadays. And so that's the question behind this licensing or certifying thing. And yes, again, you are absolutely right. We need to talk a lot. And the problem is we have experts, like I mentioned Atos, that's just one company in a gazillion who act like the same. And I was at a meeting of the Ministry of Economy in Affairs in Germany, and they were talking about certifications. And the TÜV Rheinland was there talking about the certifications. And then a question from the audience came that was, we need security certifications that are not that hard to reach like the current ones. The people, the TÜV people, they were like, what do you mean? And then these were politicians asking this question. They said, yes, the companies, the small, medium-sized companies in my district, the people that elect me, they tell us the current security certifications, they are too expensive, too hard to reach for them. They want something that is a little bit secure. And then the TÜV people said, sorry, that doesn't exist. It's better, that is like antivirus software. That is why Blameware exists, because people don't want that, and that is the hard part. We have to do a lot of explaining here, I think. And at the same time, and on the other side, we have, as I said, the nerd people that will tell people, if you can't make it completely secure, then don't do anything, there's no use doing anything at all. And that is hard. But absolutely right, yes. More questions? I think my time is up anyhow, huh? But
yeah, I think that was it. Thank you very much, Markus. Really great talk, very interesting insights.